Welcome everybody to our folklore lunch here at the Cool Folklore Center. Today's speaker is Anna Morozova, and she is one of our graduate students completing her MA in Media and Cultural Studies, which is affiliated with the Department of Modern Languages and Cultural Studies, which is at the other end of our hallway. We've been really fortunate to have her with us for the last year and a half. She's a research assistant with us here, as well as she has been working over the summer and now continues to work part-time for the Ukrainian Museum of Canada, the Alberta branch, with Elaine's group. She's also been a tour guide there and worked with their artifacts. Prior to coming to Edmonton, she was completed her MA in Cultural Studies at the National University of Kyiv in Kyiv-Mohyla Academy. In 2022, Anna was responsible for the management of the Naked Room Gallery in Kyiv, while simultaneously processing the Horska and Zaretsky archive together with their granddaughter, Olena Zaretska. In 2020, Anna curated an exhibition titled Property Rights by I've been talking in my class all day, I'm so sorry. By
Alevtina Kahidze. Yeah, that's a hard name.
And today she's going to be presenting her preliminary research on the monumental art of Viktor Zaretsky and Alla Horska, specifically the mosaics. And it's her topic for her master's thesis. And so this is practice run to share what you've learned so far and what you'll be presenting. Anyway, Anna, go ahead, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Larissa, for introduction. Yes, so I will explain today about the monumental art in Ukraine, and particularly about the destroyed mosaics. And I was thinking, like last week, due to the last events in Ukraine, whether it's like actually relevant to think about destroyed art when the people are actually being killed in Ukraine. But at least I will tell the story about these mosaics and about the people who made them, and at least they will stay in the memory of you and maybe other people to whom you can tell about them. So the main problem about this mosaic is that they're being destroyed and nobody sees them as art. And most people in Ukraine consider them as communistic art. This mosaic was located in one of the like grocery, like big stores in Mariupol. It's partly destroyed as well. People after 2014 years, they consider this mosaic as communistic, and because of the Russian war, Zaretsky and Horska's mosaics and other Ukrainian mosaics of the Soviet era are being dismantled and destroyed. This is done by Russia occupying and shelling Ukrainian cities and villages, but also by Ukrainians themselves, because the part of society perceives these monuments as purely part of Soviet propaganda. The main difficulty is that Ukraine has thousands of such mosaics, but no one officially actually counts them, and officially they are not registered. Very few of them are accepted as an art works, and they are perceived actually as ordinary decoration of Soviet buildings, which means that they can be and should be like destroyed because they are Soviet mosaics and therefore they are Russian. But Soviet is not Russian, and that's the part of Russian propaganda. And therefore they're like actually destroyed as decommunized, missing the fact that some of the artists that made these mosaics actually were killed by communists. And I chose this topic for the presentation because I was working previously, as Larissa said, with sketches and archival collection of Viktor Zaretsky and Alla Horskas. works, and together with Zaretsky's granddaughter. And when you're getting known was like person who already even died, and especially if it's like artistic group, you're kind of like getting used to them, and you're thinking about you're being familiar. It seems for you as well, like as if you're actually getting to know them, and these people like changing sometimes even your life, even though they already died like a lot of years ago. So I'm really like honored to present about them. And I'd like to begin with the history of mosaic art in Ukraine, which actually has a long history and didn't begin in the Soviet times. First discovered mosaics on the territory of Ukraine are dated back to the ancient Greek times. Early Greek colonists in ancient city-state Chersonesus Taurica left examples made in the 4th and 2nd century before the Christ. And the ruins of this Chersonesus Tauria located in the southwestern part of Crimea. And these mosaics are a UNESCO World Heritage Site. These floor mosaics on the left, there's one of those like examples of them which were found there. And this floor mosaics depicts rugs with peacocks, feathers, and quail, and are actually very beautiful examples of the ancient mosaics left in Ukraine, in the modern Ukrainian territories. But we mostly know the times of the Kiev Rus as the period when mosaics were widespread as never before, and it was thanks to Byzantine and Christianity. Most of the known mosaics on the territory of Ukraine were created in the 10th century and was associated with the adoption of Christianity. But it didn't get a special development at once because of the lack of material. The real improvement happened a bit later. When the production of glass smelt was established in Kiev, and which caused the flowering of mosaic art. The most famous and impressive works of art are the mosaic panels in St. Sophia Cathedral in Kiev, which were made in 11th century. And another treasure is mosaics in St. Michael's Golden Domed Monastery of 12th century, which is on the rightest part. And until 1920s, we know them, like the mosaics on the territory of Ukraine existed as decoration for private spaces, churches, and secular spaces, mostly serving the religious purposes of Christianity. So after since the Byzantine times and after that until the 20th century, mosaics in Ukraine, it's either decoration or for religious purpose. The massive creating of them was stopped until 20th century, and only in the middle of the 20th, mosaic art started its mass production again. The epoch of mosaic art started with monumentalists and began from the university. And this epoch of mosaics, called the 60s era, because most of the mosaics on the territory of Ukraine were made in the 60s, in the 1960s years. And this is the group of artists which began actually as a workshop at the Kiev State Art Institute, which was formed in 1937, and which raised most of the monumental artists of the 60s. And more importantly, the teachers of that institute were teaching how to unite folk art with Byzantine traditions. So in Ukraine, mosaic art was kind of produced because of some professors of the Kiev Art Institute, and especially thanks to Sinitsa. Grigory Sinitsa was one of the professors there, and he was very decisive in shaping the nonconformist consciousness of the 60s. Because he was actually faithful to Boychuk's to Boychuk's art. He was one of the pupils of Boychuk's school. This person, Grigory Sinitsa, he kind of organized monumental art in Ukraine, because most of the monumentalists and most of the mosaic artists later studied at his workshops. His idea of monumental art synthesized Boychukism and folk art. Boychukism also acquired a lot from Byzantine art, which is very known for its mosaics. Zaretsky and Horska were working together, and Sinitsa was their teacher as well. They were taking part in projects together with other monumental artists, because mosaics were very huge projects. They sometimes were like 3 meters in height and in the width as well. So because mosaics were required a lot of work, it was usually the work of more than 4 artists. And this is some of the examples of the mosaic which now left in Ukraine, and were some of their researchers tried to register them by at least photographing and trying to identify the authors. This one is located on the Nuclear Research Center in Kiev. It's again a nuclear power plant, the same building, and it's just in a shop in Ivano-Frankivsk. Also, it was to say that most of the mosaics located in their private spaces and private buildings, which means that some owners of these buildings, they're not really taking care of them, and sometimes they're being destroyed because they decided that they require renovation of the space, and these mosaics don't serve the kind of understanding of what is beautiful. Right, but in Soviet censorship, merely Ukrainian was also prohibited. So when artists were making these mosaics, when the 60ers were making and creating these mosaics, the works after this creation and before were checked, and some of them were even destroyed if displayed not properly the communist ideology. And that's how the generation of the 60ers evolved, of which Zaretsky and Horska were among the founders. The year of 1960 is considered to be the beginning of the 60th generation. And the 60ers, it's a name not only for the monumentalists, but for the authors, artists, film directors, and translators in Ukraine that were fighting against the Soviet ideology and for protection of Ukrainian culture, language, and traditions. The active work of the 60ers lasted only for 2 or 3 years. And the birth of this group was in the time when the Club of Creative Youth was founded in Kiev. It organized evenings. In memory of Ukrainian classics. They staged theatrical performances based on Mykola Kulish's plays and organized exhibitions of new artists. So that's what the group of 60ers means. And in 1962, Alla Horska, Lyudmila Samikina, Halina Zubchenko, and Viktor Zaretsky, they joined this Club of Creative Youth, and they contributed to the group's focus on national culture, which was further supported by the writers. So they arose even before the other authors. And the group of the 60ers was very revolutionary, and it was the very revolutionary decade. Was but it kind of was divided for unofficial art and official, because the same artists which were working for orders from Soviet committees, they also were working in their own studios, creating very like pure Ukrainian symbolic works, sketches, and paintings. And orders for mosaics were strictly regulated, and even the size, even the image allowed and not allowed. And when I was working with the archive of Zaretsky, there were some notes and for orders signed by Soviet committees, where they signified that the work shouldn't be more than 1.7 meters, or it shouldn't use this and this colors, it shouldn't be Ukrainian symbolic, etc. It was highly very strict rules for what should be shown and what shouldn't be. And Zaretsky and Horska was kind of not obedient in that, if to be honest. But other artists, even when they were working for orders because they had to live somehow and had to get the salary for their works, they anyways were working in the studios, creating their the sketches and the works which are not in the Soviet or communist ideology. For some artists, this incorporation of their own elements was tragical. In 1963, a wave of ideological repressions began against the Sixtiers. Primarily, they were accused in the nationalism. They launched a campaign to destroy the activity of the Sixtiers. If necessary, the activists had to be arrested or killed. And the artistic couple of Zaretsky-Horska appeared within the framework of monumentalism. They together were working on the mosaics with other artists. Almost the entire period of their collaboration in monumentalism, it was 6 years when they were working together, was marked by constant repression and persecution by the Soviet authorities. So this is one of the two works which I will tell about later. The first work and the second is located in the restaurant in Mariupol, was located. Yeah, and they made them together with other group of artists in the 60s. In 2 days, and these works are very revolutionary. This first one, which is called Kestrel Ellada Bird, or Boreviter, there's a lot of names for that, was made as it was admitted by Soviet committees. It was supposed to be like a bird in communist ideology, which had to be depicted as a fighting bird, like a fighting bird, fighting people for wellness of socialism. But they depicted it in another way, which the sketch for this was absolutely different. The sketch which was presented for the Soviet committees was different. And that's why these mosaics were prohibited, actually, but they were not destroyed until last year. And now I will tell about the biography a bit of the Alla Horska and Viktor Zaretsky. Alla Horska was much more politically active than her husband, maybe because of the family, because her father, he was working in as one of the directors of the film production, which was a Soviet company. So he was kind of known a lot of people in the Soviet authorities, among Soviet authorities. So she always was not afraid to express herself freely about her opinion on whatever she wants to. And all of her friends and colleagues emphasized that at the time most people were intimidated by the system and arrests. But she had no such fear. She became a co-founder of the Club of the Creative Youth, which is the club which initiated the 60s, and she was fighting almost all her life for the protection of Ukrainian culture. So at first she researched the burial sites discovered in the Bukivnya near Kiev, which is the secret executions carried out by the NKVD, if I pronounce it rightly, in the 30s. Also, she participated in protests against the persecution of Ukrainian human rights activists. She corresponded and was close friends with Opanas Zalevacha, who was repressed by communists and imprisoned in the camp. She even came to this camp like to visit him, but obviously nobody let her. But yeah, she was a close friend with a lot of activists in Ukraine, and the group and this friendship with Panasa Zalevacha, it was a tragic story that connected them. Horska was commissioned to do a mosaic for the Kyiv University with several other artists. You can see this like kind of stained glass mural of Taras Shevchenko in Kyiv University. The group made the stained glass, but when Moscow officials came to review the work, they ordered that it to be destroyed for its patriotic nature. And also all of the artists who were involved there, they started controlling them like very consecutively. And thirdly, in 1968, the letter of protests of the 139, or Kiev letter as it's called, appeared, and Alla Horska signed this letter. Because of that, she was expelled from the Union of Artists for the second time. And 6 months later, after she was expelled, she was found murdered in a cellar near the house of her father-in-law, Ivan Zaretsky, who was the father of her husband. Ivan Zaretsky was also found dead at a railway pass nearby. From the memories of Viktor Zaretsky, they first thought that Ivan Zaretsky was like a killer because that he was the one who saw Alla Horska the last day and last hours. But then, like a couple days later, they found him killed as well. Only one is known with the certainty, the authors of the decision. It was issued by the ideological department of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Ukraine, because when documents were revealed, like 5 years ago, the comments of their Soviet authorities were found that they made this decision. Biography of Zaretsky is like kind of a bit different, because he was her husband at least, and is one of the most famous Ukrainian singers as well. He was born in 1925 in the former Cossack town of Bilopilya in the Sloboda region. Viktor Zaretsky began his work in art in the 40s. His academic works of 40s and 50s remained in his memories as a period of dedicated work at the Academy of Arts. From those times, in his archives left a lot of sketches for teaching others, a lot of his own university works. And the decade of 60s was the most difficult period for the Horska-Zaretsky couple. He began his work in monumental art, actually thanks to her initiative, and he wrote this in his notes, like, thanks to Allah, I was like involved in this part of monumental art. The monumental order required significant involvement in every detail of the process, and fundamental work sometimes for 12 hours a day. They worked in extreme heat and constant dust. They usually worked in a group of 3. Viktor Zaretsky, Alla Horska, and Grigory Sinitsyn, which was his teacher and her teacher as well. The three of them were known as a team of monumentalists, a group, and sometimes other colleagues also joined them. The year of 1966 was exceptionally significant for all of Viktor's work. It was then that he first created his symbol, which appeared in a lot of his works, a lot of his sketches and paintings, is the symbol of bird. And the bird in Zaretsky's works has become like a kind of a landmark for his art and for his artistic practice. And if you know the Tree of Life, if you see the Tree of Life, is very old and important symbol in Ukrainian folk art, like embroidery and weaving as well. Now I will consider more. Oh, this one of the mosaics. This sketch is not for this mosaic. It's a different sketch, just from one of his archival collection. This mosaics was made in one of the restaurants as well, by Horska, Sinitsa, and Zaretsky in the 1966. It was destroyed as well later. Now I will move on to the study cases about some of the artworks which were destroyed in Ukraine by Russian missiles or by Ukrainians themselves. The first two such mosaics is the Tree of Life and the Boreviter. They were destroyed in Mariupol, and they were made in 1967 by Alla Horska and a group of co-authors, including Viktor Zaretsky, Halina Zubchenko, Boris Plaksy, Grigory Preshetko, Vasil Prakhin, and Nadia Svitlichna. They were made for the Ukrainian restaurant in less than 2 months. They created these two mosaics. Mosaics actually were exceptional artworks and achievement even for the artists themselves, because the artists used very unusual materials such as slag and metal. And in the work Tree of Life, which is there, it's just very old photos of that one. In this mosaic, the Tree of Life and the Boreviter, the Boreviter was created from stainless spoons at all, like they're melted stainless spoons, which was absolutely like a discovery for the artistic group. That you can make like really steady and very long-term mosaic from such a simple materials. Before every order, the Soviet Censorship Commission had to accept the sketches and plan. And this Boreviter, or Elada bird, was supposed to be a communist image. It was the sketch that was admitted for the implementation, but at their own risk, the artists changed the sketch approved by the authorities. And instead of a fighter bird, they made a light, fast-moving composition. In 1970, after Alla Horska was killed because of her nationalistic views on the mosaic in Mariupol, with the participation and guidance of Alla Horska, were also ordered to be destroyed. And however, one of this Boreviter and this Life of Tree were not destroyed. They were covered with additional wall, which you see, this wall in the restaurant Ukraine, behind which was a panel Life Tree. So the owners of this restaurant, they just didn't implement the order of the authorities and just decided to not destroy them, but hide them behind a brick false wall, and thus preserving these priceless art objects. Another another pictures of these mosaics were already made in 2022, when mosaics were finally destroyed by Russian missiles. They were revealed, I guess, in 2008, right? 2008, and yeah, but there was a lot of exhibitions with sketches of these mosaics in Ukraine, in Ukraine National Art Museum in Kiev, in Ukrainian Gallery, the Naked Room, but they finally were destroyed by Russians. Another mosaic in Mariupol, which was destroyed, called Metallurgists. The mosaic panel was made by Valentin Konstantinov and Lel Kuzmenkov, and was created in the waiting room of the Mariupol railway station in 1973. Its area was 100 square meters and took 2 months to create. In addition to traditional mosaic materials such as ceramics and smelt, the artists used marble and local granite. Now it's completely destroyed, and as well as previous ones can't be even renovated, even if the territory is liberated. First, the Russians destroyed the station, the railway station, with the missile, and now they have begun to dismantle this mosaic, destroying the work of art particularly. This work was created, and this work was actually legendary for like Ukrainian mosaic art, because it's a huge railway station hall. And to create this metallurgist mosaic, Valentin Konstantinov and Leil Kuzmenkov had to draw a lot of sketches that they made in the metallurgical factory and in their studio. So they were Valentin Konstantinov here on the photo, upright poses as a figure for the panel metallurgists to create this like kind of figures for this mosaic. And Kuzmenkov always emphasized that his colleague, the monumentalist Viktor Arnautov, had evaluated this work. Arnautov especially emphasized the absence of theatrical pathos in this work, which was usually present in the Soviet monumentalism. Yeah, this mosaic was preserved up to 2022, but as we know, since the Mariupol was occupied, this one photo made in 70s with people in the waiting room of the railway station. It's the photo to like the beginning of 21st century with this railway station, and this railway station how it looks now and how mosaic looks now. Yeah, most of the photos with destroyed mosaic I made by like people from Facebook who were just living there or coming by. Another study case, it's a mosaic on Kiev's Expo Center. And this one is already the example of mosaic which was destroyed by Ukrainians themselves because of their not enough knowledge about how priceless is mosaic art and what is considered as communist ideology and what is the symbolics of communist ideology. And an author and date of creation of this mosaic stays unknown. And aside from the destruction of this mosaic, which is one of the example of the demolition of demolished mosaics in Kiev's Expo Center. The building where its mosaics was made belongs to the State Emergency Service of Ukraine, and it depicts the firefighters extinguishing a fire. The mosaic was destroyed in the summer last year, 2023, during renovation work, and the State Emergency Service didn't say anything about the reasons for the destruction, but they assured us that they call it the painting first, anyways, it would be destroyed and made in Ukrainian symbolism. So they decided that there is not Ukrainian symbolism and destroyed it. I don't know since when, state of emergency can decide what is Ukrainian, what not, but somehow they have their authority to decide that. Even though some mosaics depict Lenin or Stalin, most of them do not relate to Russia, and even in opposite were made by Ukrainian monumental artists as the 60s. And anyways, they didn't admit that it was another crime. This DSNS, as it called, the Emergency Services of Ukraine, they didn't admit that it was another crime against Ukrainian culture. But what is more discouraging is the reaction of the Ministry of Ukraine that responded to the destruction of the mosaic, noting that everything was legal. They said, unfortunately, the literal words, what they said. Unfortunately, this pavilion and the mosaics did not have the status of a cultural heritage site, so the Ministry of Culture cannot apply the law to the dismantlers. Which is another reason why the mosaics are being destroyed, because they are considered as Soviet and then Russian, which is not in most of the cases is not true, because Soviet art and Soviet times era historical period of Ukraine is not like the same. Another crime was made in Lviv, and the mosaic was destroyed in 2023, so very recent, in last year. The mosaic was called Information Space and was created by artist Bogdan Soyka in 1981. This mosaic, unlike the firefighters, it had the status of a cultural heritage site. So it was kind of preserved by the Ministry of Culture, but it anyways was destroyed. Nobody cared. But it was destroyed by the current owners of this building. So just nobody known about this. And they probably thought that they can do this since the building is theirs. The mosaic information space was located in the lobby of the Free Ukrainian Publishing House. And it was made with smalt on almost the entire wall area. Now the only outline of the mosaic remained on the cement wall. So the face of this mosaic is very actually interesting and very intriguing. If we trace them, it says a lot about how we are losing our cultural identity by just neglecting it and not preserving, not making it a big deal if it's under the Russian attacks or entrepreneurs' vandalism. Since the mosaics were made in the Soviet Union, they were criticized by Soviet committees as rivalry or excessively abstract or not ideological enough. Or with double meaning, or have like nationalism, symbolism, etc. Later, with the adoption of the law on decommunization in 2015 in Ukraine, all Soviet art in Ukraine, made in Soviet times, okay, like not Soviet art, but made in Soviet times, were under the threat of destruction. The activists, art historians, curators, and artists started fighting against the destruction, involving the media, journalists, and other authorities in Ukraine. But the problem is that most of the mosaics were in the regions, in small regions all around Ukraine, and cultural departments in the regions, they don't pay attention on the activities in the centers, and in general they try not to deal with the Soviet heritage because it's too expensive, not relevant, and they have a lot of other problems, as they say. So they usually just letting it go as it does. And therefore most of the mosaics were going to be decommunized, being like destroyed actually, as Soviet ideology. Now the Russian missiles became actually the most dangerous threat for the mosaics, and even if they are destroyed, very few people care. And I understand this, like even activists right now in Ukraine, if you ask them, they're saying, oh, it's not right time to talk about mosaics because like every day we hear sirens, we are going to the bomb shelters, we don't care about mosaics, right? Yeah, but at least we can preserve the memory about them. For example, Russia destroyed the Tree of Life and the Boroviter mosaics created by Alla Horska and other artists in Mariupol, and the Ice Palace with huge mosaic panels in Severodonetsk. It's on the first photo. In March 2022, in airport near Chernihiv was completely destroyed mosaic panels by the famous artist Volodymyr Zinchenko. It's the second photo on the slide. Stained glass windows and the decorative panels that decorated buildings dating back to the 50s in Nova Kakhovka were flooded when the occupiers blew up the Kakhovka reservoir. Now a bit of my own experience with these mosaics. That's really discouraging for me. That's how art was neglected, like before, as we were fighting. And when I was working in the Naked Room Gallery in Ukraine, we had an exhibition. That's when my work and actually I got used with with mosaics began, because before that I thought that mosaic is a decoration of the building and the Soviet communistic art as well. Until I got to know with the artists themselves, which some of them are still alive. Were still alive. And we got this exhibition in Ukraine in the Naked Room Gallery on the first photo. And it got a lot of attention from medias in Ukraine. A lot of people were coming to the gallery and asking about who is an artist, about the story of these mosaics, how they were destroyed, how we can help and how we can preserve them. They were buying sketches, all of the sketches which were for sale, they were sold. And yeah, so people were just like a lot of really highly interested in this. And but later, we started working with Olena Zaretska on the archive of Viktor Zaretsky and Alla Horska, which wasn't taken care of at all. We started just photographing it, saving it on the Google folders, just trying to make the website. Now these works and sketches were sent to Khmelnytsky Museum and they are being preserved there. So all artworks on the western part of Ukraine. And the sketch, all the sketches and all this huge work, which I began and I first saw, when I first saw all of them, I was so afraid, and it was such a huge responsibility for me to work with them. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that I can even touch them. And we started working on the structure, made photos, measured them, dated them, sorted. We worked 2 summers on that. And we still had a lot to do, and unfortunately the archival organization wasn't finished because the war started. And but we managed to write and publish an article about the sketches for the monumental art. What is being done now already to preserve those mosaics, and what also can be done in the future? Well, at first, artists and researchers in Ukraine are trying to fight that those mosaics are not Russian. And even if they were made in Soviet era, some of them have more Ukrainian symbolism than any other artworks in the Soviet times. Also now people in Ukraine, mostly in regions, they still admit they belong into the Soviet culture and don't deny their destruction. Whereas the image of that mosaic as Soviet is also Russian propaganda. Last year, the Ministry of Culture in Ukraine, they found a solution. At least they accepted that those mosaics exist, and some of them are artworks. In accordance with the requirements of the new law of 2023, the Ukrainian Institute of National Remembrance is establishing an expert commission to provide its opinions on each specific object. Who will be in that expert commission, we don't know yet. So this commission will kind of decide which mosaic is Soviet mosaic and should be destroyed, and which mosaic is not Soviet and should be preserved. But we don't know who will be these people. So it's another question, but at least they accepted it. Most of the mosaics are not authorized still, and we don't know who was the author, which is also difficult. And we also don't know the whole list of them. Maybe some of them stay undiscovered, we don't know, because there was not enough effort before to go and travel around the Ukraine and preserve them or register them. One of such initiatives belonged to the volunteers, and they made website database of all mosaic, and this website called Soviet Mosaic in Ukraine. No, not this one. Soviet Mosaic in Ukraine. It contains map and unfound information about each monument. When Ilyenko first began helping the initiative, he's an author of this initiative, and he started documenting monumental art for the website. She began observing that many artists did not have their name next to their work in Soviet history books. Upon the further research, it turned out that some artists were in fact dissidents, and so their names had been deliberately left out. So some of pictures of Ukrainian mosaics can be found in Russian books of like Soviet art or something, but you never find like the description of who is the author of this mosaics, like Alla Horskova, Viktor Zaretsky. You don't find it. It's like name of the mosaic, maybe place, if you're lucky, and that's it. At first, these mosaics were documented by this volunteer Ilyenko. Secondly, one of the friends of the gallery which I was working at, Yevgen Nikiforov, he began his project, Decommunized Ukrainian Soviet Mosaics, in 2013. And he traveled around 150 cities and villages in Ukraine to document the mosaics. And he published 2 books together with the text by Polina Baitsim, who is also fighting to create a database for all the mosaics in Ukraine. Another volunteering project is made by Dmytro Solovyov, and it's Instagram and Facebook pages, which regularly posting on what is happening. They're posting photos of the mosaics, news about the destruction, or other updates about the monumental art of Ukraine. And the projects of the in the Instagram for at least have more than 95,000 followers. Another volunteers, it's the Chernihiv monumentalism group community. It's a success story, actually, because they work with the regional authorities. This group emerged in 2019 as a reaction to the threat of destruction of one of the mosaics in Chernihiv. They maintain contact with the Chernihiv Regional Department of Culture and Tourism, and thanks to the participation of Doctor of Historical Science Igor Kondratyev in Chernihiv, they managed to preserve a lot of mosaics around their city. Another self-initiative, one of the latest ones, is made by student. His name is Oleg Lavy. He created TikTok page and Instagram page, and his project called the Kintseva Stop Project. He is cleaning and taking photos of public transport stops to post them on the social media. He uses a bike. He cleans the stops and takes pictures and videos of this bus stops and shares his impressions on Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. During that year, since he created this project, he showed, last year, 2023, he showed on social networks up to 100 public transport stops of the Western Ukraine. Most of the West, like he is traveling around Western Ukraine because he is from there. He also said that he has written to the local authorities of asking them to pay attention to the poor condition of the pavilions, but none have responded to him yet. He commented, "It is difficult to explain the value of this pavilion and mosaic because either they do not pay attention to it at all because they constantly live with it and it is a natural part of the environment, or it is branded as something foreign, hostile, and Soviet. The mosaics are all local subjects. It mostly depicts like nature, traditions, lifestyle, clothes, and occupations, such as and flowers, rivers, fishes. And this object, obviously not hostile and not Soviet. So they are simply Ukrainian and with the spirit of the era when it was created. So any work of their, that's the end of my presentation, and this is a QR code for Telegram sticker pack, who has a messenger or in Telegram. There are stickers created by the gallery which I worked at. You can use it later for your messages and remember at least some artists who made such incredible art pieces. Any work. It's difficult. Why it's difficult to preserve any work of monumental art in Ukraine? It's really hard because of the insufficiency of funds at first. And because even some workers from the Ministry of Culture are not against of the decommunization of the mosaics. So very few people see the value of it, and that's why I chose to present on it, and maybe more people would become acknowledged of what those artists did a long time ago. Because for me personally, mosaics is obviously an art and huge amount of symbols, connections and meanings. And mosaic art has huge history, and we shouldn't take away the opportunity from future generations to find these artworks and learn the stories, and stories about propaganda as well, about wars, about humanity, because it's the part of the history, like some other mosaics from ancient times, for example. And neglecting it is the same censorship as Russian did before. And cultural artifacts are one of the most important things which have to be preserved, because I think they connect our past, present and future, and we can't decide what future generations should see and shouldn't. Yeah, that's all.